Greetings, I'm Salvador Cordova. Welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. In this segment, I'll explore the question, what's the difference between chemistry and biology? The question I indirectly got through the email was about the study of biology and how it is different from something like chemistry. My answer, it's a simplistic answer. My simplistic answer, not exactly right, but I think it's close, is that one needs chemistry to understand biology, but one doesn't need biology to understand chemistry. However, chemistry is an incomplete description of biology. Life is more than mere chemistry. Life is more than mere chemicals. The honest study of the chemistry of life led to the conversion of several scientists to creationism. Now, this doesn't mean that if one studies chemistry throughout one's life, one will be a creationist. I emphasize the idea of the honest study of the chemistry of life, and also really an open mind to the idea of a creator, and that can lead to the conversion to creationism if one is not already a creationist. Pictured on the left there is Dr. Dean Kenyon. He was an origin of life abiogenesis researcher and wrote the graduate textbook on origin of life that was accepted throughout graduate schools in the country. But he eventually began to have doubts about his own work and concluded the best answer was an intelligent designer, and then he wrote a creationist book known as Pandas and People. In the middle there is Richard Smalley. He is a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. He had been an atheist and then became a Christian. I don't know whether he became a creationist before or after becoming a Christian, but he became a creationist because of his understanding of chemistry and physics. He was able to connect the dots and realize that the naturalistic account of origins was not true. Similarly, Richard Lumsden on the right, he had a conversion. He went from atheist to creationist. Now, this is a paraphrase of something that he said in one of his videos. I think it's actually pretty close to what he said. But this is my best recollection. He said, if life was created, there must be a creator. He realized if life did not evolve, it had to have been created. And if it were created, there must be a creator. And sometime after he made that conclusion, he became a Christian. And that's not surprising, for it says in Romans, in the New Testament, for his, that is God's, invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So the things that have been made testify of God. It tells people that there is a creator, if they're willing to perceive it, that is. And there are other verses that talk about the suppression of the truth with unrighteousness, and there's a lot of that. People are willfully blind, or they're blinded by others, and in a lot of cases they're blinded by the devil. But if they were able to see clearly, they would see that there is a creator, and we would learn something about the Creator, his eternal power and divine nature in the things that have been made. So it's no surprise to me that there continue to be a small minority of scientists that they connect the dots and realize that the creation tells them of a Creator, that the universe and life tells them of the existence of a Creator. Elsewhere in the New Testament, Jesus says, consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. It's through the study of chemistry that this verse takes on significance. The study of chemistry in life, that this verse takes on significance that it has not in all the prior centuries of Christendom. It's in the 21st century this verse takes on far more meaning, because we're able to see that the collective ability and knowledge and intelligence of all the scientists and engineers cannot make something as glorious as the lily of the valley, because of the chemistry and the chemicals and how they are organized in a lily. It is spectacular. It should humble an honest thinker that an intelligence far greater than ours, an intelligence and a creator far greater than our abilities, must have been the cause for life. Now, just some formalities. This is a definition from Wikipedia of chemistry, since I'm trying to answer the question, the difference between biology and chemistry. Chemistry is the scientific discipline involved with elements and compounds composed of atoms, molecules, and ions. Their composition, structure, properties, behavior, and the changes they undergo during a reaction with other substances. And the definition of biology from Wiki, take it for what it's worth. Biology is the natural science that studies life and living organisms, including their physical structure, chemical processes, molecular interactions, physiological mechanisms, and development. In the Wiki definition, they'll include evolution. I omitted it because I think evolution is pseudoscience. It has really no place at the table with other real sciences, and so I omitted it. I think it is the naturalistic myth of origins, and it is not scientifically justified, so I omitted it. In any case, this is what they call the periodic table of elements. Each of the elements is composed of atoms of atoms that make up that element, and this is the listing of those elements or atoms. Not all of them. There are some that are omitted that are very, very rare, but the number is finite, probably less than 200. The number, certainly the relatively stable ones anyway. And I call this the alphabet of matter. So matter is made up of the atoms represented here, or their ions. So matter is spelled out, quote unquote, by these elements, and you can see they are represented with alphabetic characters. 97% of the human body is made of only these 6 elements: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So the way that the molecules of the human body are spelled out by these 6 elements, that is how 97% of the human body is composed. Just the spelling of these atoms, the various ways that it is quote unquote spelled in three-dimensional chemical structures. But there are things in biology and in the man-made world not described completely or conveniently by chemistry alone. For example, we have a pencil and paper drawing of a rose, and there it is right here, this rose. It's a pencil and paper drawing. Actually, it's a really good one, astonishingly good. What makes a drawing is not mere chemistry. And perhaps to belabor the point and to drive it home, we wouldn't try to understand or appreciate this drawing by examining the chemistry of the paper or the pencil that make this drawing possible. I'm going to do that just to belabor the point. the chemistry of the pencil quote-unquote ink or dye or whatever pigment is depicted here. It is graphite. Graphite is made of carbon, and the carbon is arranged in various covalent bonds, single bonds here and double bonds here, and there are other kinds of fine descriptions that you can find if you're really interested. The chemistry of the paper is described partly here, because the paper is made of cellulose. So one of the chemical compounds that make paper is cellulose. This is a chemical description of cellulose. It is also made paper is also made up of a molecule, a very complex molecule depicted here called lignin. All this to say, we would not understand or appreciate this pencil and paper drawing by studying the chemistry of the ink or the dye or the graphite, nor of the paper. That's not how we understand and appreciate what this drawing is. It is defined in a scientific sense by the location and concentration of the chemicals. So what do I mean? Well, we have a very dark region here, and you can see it has different shades there, and then we have a lighter region here, and the alternating dark and light, and then with some blank spaces here, enable us to see a two-dimensional representation, black and white representation of a three-dimensional rose. But we wouldn't try to say or understand why this is a drawing by studying the chemistry of the pigment and the paper. It just doesn't make sense. It has to be explained, at least mechanically, in terms of the location of the pigments on the paper, the coordinates anyway, and the concentration. Beyond that, there is also philosophically the meaning and purpose of the drawing and some other things. So the point I'm making is chemistry is not a complete or sufficiently convenient way of describing things, even something as simple as this. And by way of extension, living things are about the organization of the chemicals, not just the chemistry of the chemicals. It's about organization. So it makes this drawing a drawing. Part of it is not the chemistry of the pigment, the graphite, or quote-unquote the ink alone. It's the positioning, it's the organization of the pigments on the paper. And living things are kind of the same with their chemicals. It's organization. I will, in passing, mention that unfortunately creationists have adopted the notion it's chemicals plus information. I think that was a very unfortunate term introduced primarily by A.E. Wilder Smith maybe about 50 years ago in his debate with Richard Dawkins. Organization, I think, is a much more tangible way and defensible way of describing. It's chemistry plus organization. It's not chemistry plus information. We can describe information in terms of organization, not so well the other way around. That's just a pet peeve. I need to point that out. Think organization, not information. There's a lot of stuff in both the ID and creationist community that talk about information. I think organization is the better term than information. So going back to this lignin molecule that is in paper, it is also in the lily of the valley. So Jesus said, consider the lily of the valley. They neither toil nor spin. Consider how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. But I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. That saying now has more meaning in the 21st century than in any of the other centuries in the history of the Christian church. The reason for that, you can kind of get an impression just by looking at this molecule that it is extremely complex. In fact, we can't make this molecule from scratch. We have to actually get it from living things because it is so hard to make. Now one would think, oh, look at the chemicals that make it up, the elements. It's just oxygen, hydrogen and carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon, just different amounts in different locations. So you ought to be able to just throw all that in to some beaker and come up with something like this. But as the saying goes, that's easier said than done. To get it to organize in this organization is far more difficult. This is far more difficult than getting random Scrabble letters to organize in a specific pattern. This is brutally hard. There's a reason we don't just take carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen and put them together to make lignin. We have to go out and cut down trees. We have to go out and cut down trees that have this lignin molecule so we can make paper. Because the lignin molecule, if we were to make it from scratch, would exceed all the present technologies and known science in humanity. It is a testimony, in my opinion, to people of the 21st century that God has left the record here for us to consider. This is telling us there is an intelligence. There is a being that has much more intelligence and capability than anything that mankind has. And where does it reside? In things like the lily of the valley. And so, even though we wouldn't use chemistry to understand the significance of a drawing, we do need chemistry to help us understand and appreciate the works of God in biology. So we do need chemistry if we really want to appreciate God's work in biology. By the way, this is the synthesis metabolic pathway to create lignin. This is another monstrous machine that we cannot recapitulate on our own from scratch. We have to borrow the parts from living things to build it, if at all. So going back to the question I got indirectly asked through the email was about the study of biology and how it is different from something like chemistry. And my answer, and I admit it's probably not exactly right, I do think it's close. One needs chemistry to understand biology, but one doesn't need biology to understand chemistry. But chemistry is an incomplete description of biology. Life is more than chemistry. And so, but what is the best answer then? I'd suggest study as much biology and chemistry as you can, and you might find the answer you are seeking. An honest study of biology and chemistry is the study of God's work, and it will help you declare God's works. It'll help you declare God's works. Now, I know that that seems like a tall task to study chemistry and biology if you haven't, and it is. It is a tall task. I will point out that we have had missionaries that would spend probably years studying the language of the people group that they were trying to reach out to. It took years to learn the language. And so this channel is organized to help people that are either college science students, graduate level scientists, or, in industry or academia. It is also to help people that are interested in helping such science students. And it does take work if you want to learn the language of science so you can reach people that speak the language of science and understand the world primarily through the lens of science. It's great. And I would encourage people to say that science is a gift of God. Science is a gift of God. And it will help us to understand his works. True science. There's a lot of false science, and you'll read about that in the New Testament. It talks about not being taken away by science falsely so-called, because there is science that is falsely so-called science. It's not really science. It just pretends to be science. Among those in the present day would be abiogenesis theory and evolutionary theory. These are not real sciences. They are fake sciences, just like fake news. And it has deceived generations. And this channel is organized to help call it out in the language of science, to call it out why it is not true why it is not true to say that these are sciences. They can believe it if they want, but it doesn't accord with what we really know about chemistry and physics, and they don't admit that. So I hope this has been helpful to some of you. It's been a joy trying to put this little show together. I would ask that you support this channel for free by hitting the subscribe button, because it helps get this channel a better ranking by search engines like Google and YouTube, and thus helps spread the truth. And also, please refer friends to this channel. Take care, and God bless you.